morning. Some of you may know our chapel speaker today. He has spoken here in years past, and he just recently spoke at our rally day, and he is also the pastor at the Well in Kingsburg. So please give a warm and welcome to Pastor P.J. Lewis.
Thank you. Wow. Hey, thanks, fans. Hey, I don't know if you got a Bible. I don't know if do you guys usually bring a Bible or something like that to chapel? That sound like that's, I don't know, that just sounds weird to me. But anyway, if you do have something, whatever, you want to look it up, I think they got verses up here too. There's one verse that they're probably not going to have up here because I just kind of added it this morning. So, but Genesis chapter 4. You ever gone to like a, I don't know, a group of people or something, maybe it's been an exercise, you get around in a circle or something like that, and you're asked, like, what Bible character do you relate to? You ever done something like that? I've had that happen before, like, hey, what character in the Bible do you relate to? Maybe if we're all, like, standing in a circle or sitting in a circle, what would people say? And some people might say, like, oh, you know what, I really relate to Peter. Maybe some of you would say that, because I have a hard time, like, sometimes I deny that, if I'm in a crowd or whatever, maybe I wouldn't, maybe stand up for my faith as much. I can really relate to that. Or maybe I like to talk a lot, and maybe I stick my foot in my mouth sometimes. Oh man, I'm like Peter. Or maybe some of us would say, you know what, I'm like John. I just have this affection for Jesus, and I really relate to the love that God has for me, and I really resonate with love with God. And so I feel like I'm kind of like John. Somebody might say, like, oh, I'm Jonah. Man, I run away when the going gets tough, or God wants me to do something, I run away. You guys ever done like something like that? Like, you're kind of, like, maybe right now, like, what character in the Bible do you relate to? What character do you relate to? Maybe you're like, oh, I'm Daniel. I feel like I had to stand up for God, and maybe when nobody else around me has, and I relate to that. What if, I thought to myself, what if somebody in the circle, we're going down the circle, and, oh, I'm like John, I'm like Peter, oh, I'm like Paul, or I'm like Daniel, or I'm like Jonah, or whatever else. And then the person next to you goes, I really relate to Cain. I'd be like, okay, do you have a brother? Because Cain, who says Cain? Nobody says Cain. I mean, maybe a freako guy would say Cain, I really think I'm like him, I really think about killing my brother. Like, I have a brother, older brother, not a younger brother, but I want to say this first of all. After reading Genesis chapter 4 and really looking at it, I relate to Cain. Now, before you freak out, no, I don't want to kill my brother. But see, we think about Cain. When I said Cain, I think some of you guys who remember Cain, he's known for that, right? That's what he's known for. He's known as the first murderer, right? But do you know that actually was a symptom of his problem? That really wasn't his problem. That was a result of his problem. His problem started way before he even thought about killing his brother. And that's what I relate to. Maybe you can too. So we look at it, Genesis chapter 4. Just a few minutes just to go through it. It says this in verse 1. Now Adam knew Eve. This is after the fall. We all know about that. Now here's the results now. And it says, now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, first son, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. So let's just kind of set up the scene. So here's Adam and Eve. They have their first kids. First child is Cain. Second child is Abel. They have two boys. And now we even know what they end up doing in life. What is Cain? He's a farmer. Okay, we can relate to that. Maybe some of us have families that are farmers. That's what Cain becomes. Abel becomes a rancher. He becomes somebody that has sheep, and he's a shepherd. And so there's the two things that they are. And then it says this. This makes sense. To me, it makes sense in verse 3. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering. Now, we're going to see that both of them bring an offering to God. Like, hey, there's a course of time, and I don't know if it's a certain day that they go, hey, let's just offer something to God to show how much we appreciate Him and who He is, and just make a sacrifice to Him, that kind of thing. And it says, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. Which makes sense, because he's a what? He's a farmer. So when he thinks about bringing something, what's valuable to him? Yeah, the fruit, the crop and stuff. Just like for some of us, if we know farmers or we are in a farming family, I mean, that's what it's about is the fruit. I mean, that's where you get your money from. That's where the value is. So you're going to offer that. And it says, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portion. So doesn't it make sense that that's what Abel would bring? Like, because what's valuable to him? His sheep. So I'm gonna bring that to him. Maybe you could think about what's valuable to you. If we were gonna say, let's just make a sacrifice to God, let's bring something up here that would be something valuable to you that you would then give to him. And we might all bring different things, but what might be valuable to you might not be as valuable to me. But it is what's valuable to you that would make that sacrifice, that would make that a real good sacrifice. So then it goes, this is when I start thinking, like, I don't get the story that much. I'm being honest with you. When I first read it, it says that at the end of verse 3, or verse 4, it says, and the Lord had regard, or accepted, or like, hey, he was pleased with Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. And so Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Now we kind of see, that just setting up, do you already see that the murder thing wasn't the thing? It's a result of the thing. He gets all angry and he blames his brother like, oh, how come God accepts you, but he doesn't accept me? He gets all jealous. But where did it all begin? It all began with what? This offering. And when I read it, and I don't know if when you read it, maybe you can kind of think through it with me. At first, when I was a kid and stuff, and I would read this thing, I'd be going, wow, man, God accepts Abel and his offering because Abel brought sheep. And then he doesn't like Cain because Cain brought fruit. It's not that Cain didn't make an offering. It's not like the offering day came and Abel goes, yeah, I'm going to make an offering to God. And Cain goes, yeah, I'm not going to give anything to God. Is that what happened? No. He gave something. So it made me think this for a while. It made me think, oh, God likes meat. That's what it is. Like when God, like he likes lamb chops more than he likes a fruit basket. That's what he likes. You know, and he's like, oh, yeah, and that's me. I mean, if I want meat or vegetables, you bring me meat, man. That's what I want. I don't want the veggies. And I actually thought, like, that's God. Because that's the only difference that I see. They both brought an offering. They both brought it on the same day. They both brought something that would be valuable to them. So the only difference I saw for a long time was what the offering was. As if you bring the right offering, then God will accept it. If you bring the wrong offering, and hope you don't do that, then God won't accept it. Do you kind of see how I got that? Even if you're disagreeing with me, do you see how I got that? I totally thought that. Then I actually read it says, the Lord had regard not just for the offering, but for the person bringing the offering. He had regard for, do you see how it says it at the end of verse 4? He had regard for Abel's offering? No, he had regard for Abel and his offering. And he didn't have regard for just Cain's offering, like I don't like fruit. No, he didn't have regard for Cain and his offering. So then it made me even think like he likes ranchers but doesn't like farmers. Like he likes certain people and he doesn't like other. Like, what's the deal here? What is the difference? Because it looks like there's so much the same. And then I really looked at it. Maybe some of you guys already saw it. But do you notice what it says here again in verse 3? Look what it says. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. If it was exactly the same, the next sentence should say this. And Abel also brought an offering of his flock. That's what it should say. If it's exactly the same. Cain brought an offering of fruit, and Abel brought an offering of sheep. But it doesn't actually really just say that, does it? Does it say something a little bit different about Abel's offering? See, it says that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the what? Firstborn of his flock and of their skinny portions, of the fat portions. If it was going to be the same that way, it should have said this. Cain brought an offering of the first fruits. You guys heard of first fruits before? Like the first stuff that comes in right off the top, I don't even know what crop is going to come in after this. I'm going to give you whatever comes in first. That's what it should say if it was the same kind of offering. But because that doesn't say that about Cain, it's actually not saying that on purpose, because Cain wasn't bringing the top and the best and the first. He was bringing the leftovers. He brought an offering, but he made sure that his barns were full first. The first stuff I got to keep. Then after that, then you can have, as long, now that I know that I have enough money and I know I have enough stuff and I can be secure for the year, oh, look at this extra. Look at the extra stuff I have. I'm going to give that to God. And it might even have been this exact same amount. It might have even been the same amount, but it's with a different attitude. Do you guys get that? That's what hit me. Because I thought to myself, man, I am totally like this. I'm like Cain. And maybe some of you guys might be thinking, you know what? I'm a lot more like Cain than I would think of. So next time in the circle, say Cain and just see what everybody does. Basically, yeah, I'm totally related to Cain. But think about this. I think some of us really can, especially those of us who have been in this school for a long time. You have chapel every single week. You go to church or whatever else. That's probably the most of you. You know God. You know who He is. Do you know you're supposed to sacrifice stuff to Him? Do you know you're supposed to give of yourself to? Of course you do. But what's your attitude behind it? Is it like, I grew up so much in the church, you guys, that for a long time, it was just rote. That's just what you do. You just come, oh, it's sacrifice day. Okay, we're going to make it off. Oh, it's going to come in here. We're going to worship and stuff. But man, it's like the extra stuff. It's not like really sacrificial to me. It's just I have time for this, so now I'm going to do this now. But do I really have an attitude? No, He has the first. I would even give Him the first before I even know what happens after that. I would give Him whatever I had, and then it would be even scary to give Him what I'm thinking of giving Him. It'd be scary. There's a big difference. See, Cain wasn't rejected. His stuff wasn't rejected because it's not even really about the sacrifice. It was about the attitude behind it. It's about the faith that he lacked. Because when you keep your stuff and you don't just give it to God, you don't just give it to Him, that just shows that you really are dependent upon who? Dependent upon God? Or dependent upon yourself and your stuff and your crop? And the stuff that you know you can do so you can fulfill yourself. In Hebrews chapter 11, if you want to write it down, Hebrews 11:4, so you can read it. Hebrews 11:4 gives us something about the attitude that Abel had that was different than Cain. Listen to these words. It says this: by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain. What made Abel's sacrifice more acceptable than Cain is because Abel had to offer it by faith. It took a lot of faith to offer that sacrifice. For Cain, it didn't take any faith at all. It didn't take faith at all to offer what he was offering. It was just extra. But for Abel, it was the first stuff, not knowing what was going to come in after that. And it says this: through which he was commended as righteous because of his faith. It says God commending him by accepting his gift. That God says, I'm accepting this gift, but it's not about the gift, it's about your attitude behind it. Because the next sentence is this in verse 4. It says, and through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. That even though he was murdered, you go, man, it was a bad ending for Abel. That God says he's still alive. He still had life, even though his brother did what he did to him. But did you catch it? Through his faith, not through his sacrifice. It wasn't through his offering. It was through the faith that was behind the offering. Because think about how much did Abel have to be dependent upon God to offer what he offered? He has some sheep. Let's say you got sheep here. You got a bunch of sheep, and you're like, okay, this is what my livelihood is about. Whether it's to shear it, for clothing, or whether it's to eat it, or whatever else, like this is my livelihood. And when you have a sheep that's pregnant, and that sheep has its firstborn, and you go, I am going to give this firstborn to God, not knowing if that sheep is ever going to give birth again. And what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? Man, I'm dwindling my herd. I'm actually losing what I need to rely on to live. So what I do to be safe, and what we do to be safe is this. We have the firstborn and we go, well, I'm going to keep that so I can make sure I have another generation of sheep. But I am definitely going to give God what? The next one. And we think that's not really that much different. I'm not going to give God the first of my time, but man, after I accomplish everything that I'm going to accomplish, He's got whatever's left. Praise God. I'm not going to give God the right to decide the relationships that I have. I'm not going to give over to Him relationships that I have in life. I'm going to make sure I have these certain relationships that I can count on and be fulfilled with. But after that, He's in control. You know what? I'm going to just make sure that I have everything set for today. I want to make sure I have everything set in my life. You know what? I have these things I want to do after I finish school. I want to, accomplish this, but you know what? After all of those things are in a row and after I got the thing, He's got everything else. And we think that's huge. But all I'm taking is what I need. And God's saying, I want you to give me what you need. Wow. I want you to give me what you need. I want you to just be willing to hand over the things in your life that you think you need in order to survive, in order to be fulfilled, and trust me. Because here's the other thing that Abel does. He looks at his sheep, but he doesn't just give them the first ones. He also goes, which ones are the fattest ones? I mean the healthiest, the ones we can get the most meat from, the ones that I can sell at the fair for the biggest price. Let's give God those ones. And let's keep that scrawny one. And see what happens. Do you see the faith that he had? He went, God, I'm not going to give you leftover. I'm going to give you stuff so much that I'm going to have to depend on you. It's going to be risky for me to trust you with this. It's going to be risky. But man, we are so comfortable, you guys, that we think if we just give God something, well, at least that's better than nothing. Was Cain's something better than nothing? It wasn't. It was the same as nothing. That just hit me, you guys. I don't know if even now you're going, wow, I do relate to Cain a little bit more than I thought I did. What's awesome, you guys, if you go back to chapter 4, after Cain got angry, there was something that happened before he decided to kill his brother that God actually came and gave him a chance to do something. Look what it says in verse 6. It says, and the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? Like, you don't have to continue to be angry. Don't let this bitterness kind of consume you. He says, if you do will you not be accepted? And if you don't do will, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. It's like God was saying, you have a choice to make here. You're at a crossroads, Cain. And maybe some of us are in this room are at a crossroads right now, where you're like, man, I'm willing to have some kind of relationship with God, but man, not radical. It's not going to be radical. It's going to be there. It's going to be better than nothing. I'm going to offer him something. And God's going, no. How about you just depend on me? Let's get Abel out of the way. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just it's me and you. And he says, man, you don't have to be angry. If you do well, and in this context, he's saying, if you just decide to depend on me, how about you have this attitude that just is going, God, I'm going to give you everything I have. Like it's yours. It might even be scary for me to give it to you, but I'm going to trust you. He's going, you can trust me, Cain. But if you keep trusting in yourself, that was what Cain was doing. He goes, I got to trust my fruit. That's where I can get satisfaction or fulfillment or stability or security. That's where I'm going to get it. You get some extra. What if we go, no, I'm going to get my security and everything in God. God, you take whatever you want. You change whatever you want. You do whatever you want in my life. I'm going to trust you. And that's scary. And God's going, I know that's scary. But you know what? You can trust me. He goes, if you don't, you're going to continue looking for yourself or a career or your academics or your abilities or your relationships or your status. You're going to look at everything to give you what you want. But what's really going to be happening is you are going to be dependent, but not on me. You're going to end up being dependent on sin. And sin is going to control you instead of allowing me to control you. That was so weird, you guys. When we decided to take control of our lives, we think we're in control. But that's not true at all. There's a truth that's just a basic truth. I just want to remind us all of this right now. None of us in this room are independent. Every single one of us in this room is dependent. I could say that with total confidence. I don't even need to know about what's going on in your life. Every single one of us is dependent. We're either going to end up being dependent upon God, or we're going to end up being dependent upon sin. And that's what God was trying to tell Cain. Look, you think you can't trust me, so you got to just have your own hoard of stuff and be in control. You're not in control. Either allow me to be in control, or sin will be in control. Let that sink in, you guys. Don't let even sin right now lie to you and say that's not true, because that is true. And I think you know it. So maybe we relate to be Cain, but man, I love to just relate to be Abel. I would love to relate that and just go, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you with the first stuff. I'm going to trust you with the stuff that I would normally depend on. I'm going to give you enough that it would be scary. It's going to be scary for me to allow you to control that area of my life. But I'm going to do it anyway. Lord, I thank you for this time you gave us even this morning, just a few minutes to just remind ourselves of just some truths about what real offering to you looks like, what a real sacrifice to you looks like, what real dependence upon you looks like, honestly, God. It all is about faith. It's not about our offerings. It's not about our sacrifices. It's not about the meat, or it's not about the fruit. It's about our hearts. God, that we would just examine our hearts, that we wouldn't fool ourselves, and we wouldn't allow sin to fool us. We would allow you to be the one that we depend on. And we would give, and in so many ways, God, whatever way it looks like for us, we would give you the firstborn of the flock. And we would give you the fat portions. That's our prayer, God. Keep shaping us. Thank you for having patience with us, like you even did with Cain. Thanks for always being able to let us push a reset button. And I pray that we would do that. And that's how we would be different than Cain. Lord, thank you again for your word. In your name, amen.